for me as a musician, I feel that the cultural space is not represented enough.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the ECA Podcast Series. I am Ernest Chicho. Our guest on the program today is a Ghanaian artist, a reggae singer, but also an advocate for environmental issues and sustainable development in Africa, Rocky Dawuni.
I dedicate this song to you, my beautiful people.
There's a tendency for artists or people in your industry to want to top the charts, the pressure to go mainstream. How have you managed to survive that torrent, yet stayed focused on the issues? Here I am referring to the correlation between your arts, your music, and sustainable development in Africa.
For me, first of all, the importance of my artistry was how much impact I could make. And as much as I was also interested in growing my audiences and also their platform of fame to expand, I always saw every magnified platform as an alternative to utilize that light to, shed light on social issues. So it was an aspect of me, and I felt that the music was the vehicle towards achieving that aim. And I met other artists too who were more the other way,
So the enthrallment of the commercial side of music,
yes,
doesn't really sway you off.
No, it doesn't sway me off. I'm aware of it, and I also attend to that. But I attend to that in order to sharpen the ability for me to deliver messages that are important on a much more bigger scale. So for me, the content is very, very key. And that's why, I see myself more, I'm not swayed by the trappings and the commercial aspects, but in terms of how much impact my message, spreads across.
Now, talking about content, we're having this conversation on the margins of an annual meeting of African ministers to do with environmental issues on the continent. Why are you interested in environmental issues?
Well, for me, the environment is what nurtures who we are. The environment, when we look at it in a much more broader sense, is the air we breathe, the plants around us, and also the people around us, and then the ecosystem around us. So as somebody too who is very keen to be a conduit for social consciousness, and at the same time to inspiring people to be aware of what gifts they have, I feel that my voice, utilizing my voice to really drive this issue home, is a primary part of my artistry. So coming here, connecting with ministers, talking about it on my blogs, my audiences, talking about tree planting, taking care of the water bodies so that we have fresh water, in terms of biodiversity, preservation, and new ideas of conservation that are sustainable. I feel all of these things in the long run comes to give validation for what my music really represents. So that's why I am here.
So you've talked about tree planting. I was going to ask a question to do with what are the specific areas when it comes to environmental issues that you'd like to see change in?
Okay.
You've just talked about tree planting.
Yes, tree planting and also protection of indigenous species, because in our ecosystem we need that biodiversity. So biodiversity protection is a very key thing because it also ensures that we are able to protect ourselves from drastic changes in the environment that can lead to, new diseases popping up. For me sustainable agriculture, like organic agriculture, is also very important to me because the food we eat has to be clean, has to come from clean sources. We have to use organic means to grow our food because all the pesticide and chemicals are finding themselves into our environment. We're finding it in all the fish and life form that people eat. There's high mercury in the fish that comes from the ocean. You find microplastics in frogs and even the fish. So all of these things that are kind of are part of the modern environment are impacting us in terms of our health. I believe in also demonstrating a lot of the things that I do.
People think of the artistry, or at least music or entertainment or business,
Yes.
as the only thing you should do to survive in life. But here you are. Not only are you a writer, composer, producer, multi-talented artist, but you also are a farmer.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Well, the thing is that I grew up in a traditional home. In a traditional home, farming was always something that was part of us. So as I grew up as an artist too, the land was important to me. That's why conservation is important to me. And so having a farm, I'm interested always in, learning about new plants. Whenever I travel and I go on tour, another thing that I do that people don't see is that I go and look for, other, plants, species that I don't have that I could be able to bring to my own country and plant on my farm and stuff. So I have a cocoa farm, I have a coconut farm, I have a farm too that, I grow like, food crops, maize, and it's the season just ended, so I'm getting back to Ghana to go and harvest, my maize. And then I'm into gardens too, vegetable gardens, making sure that it's more in terms of taking the power of what you eat into your own hands, because it needs to be clean. The food needs to be clean. And these days, food sources, you can't really be able to know the food sources because of the over-chemicalization of and pesticization of agriculture.
Are you able to market some of your produce?
A lot of times I tend to market if I have overages,
The reason I'm asking is because now there is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area
Yes.
that is coming to place.
Yes.
And so, producers are encouraged to sell across borders.
Yes.
Is that something you think you would scale up your farming business so that you can benefit from the AFCFTA?
Yes, agribusiness is a very important part. And for me, the farm gives me lyrics for my music. I'm inspired when I'm working with the land.
This is amazing.
Yeah, that's the inspiration comes from the land, just being among the trees. And then what I also do is that it also helps me to communicate the story of conservation and the story of youth agriculture and all of that. A lot of times when I'm in my farm, I will post stuff from my farm. Planting season, when I'm planting, I'll post stuff from my farm, and it really starts a big conversation. And I've used that to also make arguments about us focusing on organic agriculture and how the value of the products that we have is actually even higher because people pay more. And also the youth getting into agriculture and seeing it also as a business, and also as something that they should aspire to, because even when it comes to cocoa, Ghana is one of the world's biggest exporter of cocoa. But when you look at the median age of the cocoa farmers, it's the older age. So we're losing that foundational aspect of our economy if we're not able to inspire young people to go into. So for me, agriculture, land, that is who we are. That's why we need to protect it. We need to protect the environment to make sure the land is sustainable. We need to learn new ideas of new things that we can plant that is valuable, that we can be able to fetch higher amounts of money for our youth so that they don't have to jump into boats and expose themselves to just go and do menial jobs in other places when they are blessed with land, resources, mindset, and all we need is the power to organize all of this for our way forward. So agriculture for me is a cornerstone, and the land is a cornerstone of agriculture.
Very powerful message, and I can sense the passion coming through. So beyond writing and composing the songs that you record and put out, how else do you reach out to your audience? You do conferences, you recently were in Costa Rica, I understand?
Yeah, conferences. I also, in Costa Rica, I was working on an initiative to deal with people of African descent. So I also work in terms of the cultural connection. The cultural space is where I see there, because it's through culture that conservation is, I see conservation under culture. I see preservation of environment and the culture. I see sustainable development and the culture, because most of this were part of our traditions to begin with, and they were part of our nature. It was like a cultural R&D that we did over generations. But through the westernization, without preservation of our certain important cultural aspect of us, because we were not in control due to colonization and other things that interrupted our ability to be able to articulate and chart our own course. We lost a lot of this, so I feel that bringing the traditional culture back and also finding all of these indigenous knowledge that were part of creating our the harmony that has made us survive as a people till now is very, very important.
So the United Nations General Assembly is coming up in a few days, and I think that's one of the kind of places where voices like yours should be present. Is that something you're considering?
Yes, this year I am. For the past few years, I have always been at the General Assembly in one capacity or not. Sometimes in terms of UNEP events, and sometimes various organizations that I feel that I could lend my voice to what the initiative is going. So I was at the launch of GABI last year, Global African Business Initiative, and I've also done collaborations with the UN Global Compact, and this year I'm doing a Global Compact event, and then also another private event with climate change mitigation project, and then also other UNEP events that are gonna. So for me as a musician, I feel that the cultural space is not represented enough, the cultural diplomacy space, and people sometimes don't even understand like how powerful and valuable artistic voices that are also understand the dynamics of cultural diplomacy can be contribute to the affairs and decisions that impact the whole world. And so for me, I try to be there to at least be around the table and also, get a seat or a stool around the table so that what my belief in and my contributions to eventually get heard and ultimately get implemented.
The dynamics of the entertainment industry have changed a great deal. Across Africa, young talents, everybody wants to be an overnight star. What message do you have for these numerous young people who want to become overnight stars in entertainment?
Well, what I always tell them is that you have to come from a place of authenticity. You see, authenticity and then a uniqueness of voice. Because if you're authentic and you have a uniqueness of voice, that means that what you have is something that people are going to be excited, to buy into, and not to be blinded by the spotlight, because the spotlight is fleeting, and the spotlight is something that is not a destination. It's part of your journey. You might be up today, tomorrow you go down, only a few years to come up and go. And sometimes, some careers start on a very explosive trajectory and then they implode. So to have that longevity, what you have to do is that there has to be a message to what you're about, and you have to also try to leverage the platform that you have for something that is meaningful. And I feel that when your art invests in your people, in terms of invest does not mean financial, invest means the mindset and the focus, and not necessarily to wear the gold chains or to drive the fast cars and really depict an illusory life form that in the long run it will be deceptive to the young people, and they will aspire for something that is not attainable. But you utilize it to also try to inspire people to believe in themselves, believe in their identity, believe in their culture, believe in who they are. You use that to reinforce the identity politics of your own people, to be appreciative of who they are. then I feel that then the cultural space and all of the success that is being chalked by African artists right now, to some extent, will be the legacy of it will be something that will be long lasting. But if artists don't utilize that, and basically it's because everything is fleeting, and this is the pop culture. You know, seeing movements come, movement go. You know, there was the reggaeton movement that was as big as what Afrobeat is doing right now. That came from all the black Latin diaspora. It took over America for several years, and then now it's resolved. You know, the dance hall movement came, it was strong that way. There were all these stars that came out of it and also ran its course. So everything has its, you know, beginning, is kind of time in the spotlight, and then also it's going to resolve at some point. So when you have this opportunity, I feel that you should first of all think about what is the primary thing that the continent needs. The continent needs healing right now. The continent needs people to be aware of its environment. The continent needs the young people to have a direction. The continent needs good governance, good leadership. The continent needs our music to be meaningful. You know, we don't have the luxury of our music being something about just consumerism, you know, and, you know, just pushing an illusion. You know, ours should be meaningful. And I think that is the only way when the idea of African pop star will be redefined, and the concept of pop stardom can also have an African attribute that will be emulated from our time in the spotlight.
Nicely put, Rocky. Let me pick from some of your lines. You said the spotlight is short-lived,
yes,
and you talked about the importance of legacy. What kind of legacy would you, Rocky, like to leave behind? How would you like to be remembered?
For me, you know, legacy is something that you don't have control over, you know, it's about how you live your life. And I feel that, you know, you can have a certain image, but if the truth of your actions are not reflective of that image, then obviously your legacy is not going to be representative of that.
Do you think of yourself as the voice of the people?
Yes, I think of myself as a voice of the people. I think myself as a servant of the people. I feel that, you know, when your gifts are used for a higher form of service, you know, then its legacy endures beyond you, because it's about the individual morphing into the collective. And I feel that is what my music and my calling is about, is to champion what is genuinely African, champion our truth, and also our people. We've suffered through a lot, and I feel I want to be remembered as one of the voices that really stood for what is African, what is true, and at the same time to what really elevates all of humanity.
Will you be carrying this message to COP28?
Yes, that will be my message. My message is a message of inclusion, the message of thinking human. That means that decisions that are going to be made shouldn't serve individual interests. You know, we have to bury the interest-driven type of world. We need something that is steeped in compassion, cleaning the waters, education, justice, fairness, opportunity.
You almost sound like you're doing lyrics to a song or a poem. and not to put you on the spot, but I cannot have someone of your caliber and not expect of you a little a cappella of something, or at least what you would consider one of the most powerful phrases in your music.
I think, you know, one of my recent songs, Beautiful People, you know, everything in life is a sacrifice, but I know it was worth the price because I did it for you.
Sacrifice, but I know it was worth the price, for I did it for you.
Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate your accepting to be part of the ECA Podcast Series. All the best at COP28.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. That brings us to the end of the ECA Podcast Series today. I'm Ernest Chincho. Until next time, stay blessed.